All right, another edition of the Wrap-Up Show with John Schaefer and Jim Russell, presented by Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance. Before we get into this live edition, who's going to be the next Padres manager, a reminder, subscribe, hit that button down below, hit the notification bell, like our videos, follow us on Twitter, at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD, and Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance. If you're shopping for auto, home, renters, or life insurance here in San Diego, there's one place to turn, and it's to a San Diegan. Mark, over at Farmers Insurance, he's got a decade of experience. He helps people like you and I find the perfect insurance products. He's a lifelong San Diegan. He lives and dies in every pitch like you and I do. He was watching last night, by the way, Giants and Dodgers. We were texting back and forth. If you click the link down below in the description, you'll get to Mark's website. Let him help you and your family with your insurance needs.
If you have any questions for him, easy to reach out to him at mnimitz. It's mnimitz at farmersagent.com, mnimitz at farmersagent.com. That's his email address. Email him anytime if you have any insurance questions or needs, mnimitz at farmersagent.com.
All right, we're live for the next 30 minutes or so, and we're going to try to answer some questions. If you have questions, get them into that comments box wherever you're watching right now. Who's going to be the next Padres manager? We've been talking about this really all week. And the reason to subscribe to this channel, by the way, is if you want exclusive year-round Padres content, we're here for you. We've been talking about Bruce Bochy and Ron Washington and Aaron Boone. You know, yesterday we go on the radio, Jim, and we find out, obviously, that Mike Schilt is out of St. Louis. And we were talking about, what is the better job? I think a day ago, 36 hours ago, there were two openings. I thought the Padres was clearly the better job. I thought the Padres are in a better spot a year or two ahead of the New York Mets. But then the Cardinals job comes open. And the way the Cardinals finished, and they've been in the postseason 3 straight years, and they've been in the postseason 15 of the last 20 years, essentially. They've won multiple World Series this century as well. I mean, all of a sudden, the Padres have some competition potentially for some of these names. I don't know if it's Ron Washington. I don't know if it's Aaron Boone. I don't know if it's Bruce Bochy. But whomever they're looking at the very least, you think they've got some competition right now, right?
Yeah, before yesterday, it was just the Padres and the Mets. And both of those jobs, while desirable, you're having a lot of questions if you're a manager going into that situation with the front office and the roster construction and just the stability of the franchise. Like, there are definite questions about the Padres and the Mets. I feel like the Cardinals, a lot less questions about the stability of that organization, the front office, the ownership, the general manager, the development staff, the minor league systems, the clubhouse with the players in it. It's almost like a ready-made situation, I feel like. So when that news dropped yesterday, Mike Schilt getting fired, it was a giant like eyebrow raiser, like, wait, what? And it was, to me, very surprising because Mike Schilt in his 3.5 years there made the playoffs 3 times, made an NLCS, won 90 games 2 years. The year that he took over, he went, I think, 41-28. So in 3.5 years, making the postseason, 3 years, having 2 90-win seasons, if that happened in San Diego, that manager would get literally a lifetime contract. He would get a statue out in the outfield because that's that doesn't happen here in San Diego. You don't have a manager winning 90 plus games in 2 out of 3 years, making the postseason 3 straight years, and then getting fired. Jace Tingler, while he got fired in that press release, it seemed like he was like Mike Schilt. This guy's the second place manager of the year voting last year. He's one of the winningest managers in Padres history, blah, 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 blah. Oh, by the way, he had the most epic collapse in Padres history. So, yeah, the Cardinals job, if I'm Bruce Bochy, if I'm Aaron Boone, if he becomes available, even Ron Washington, it's hard not to look at that job as the number one job out there over the Padres and the Mets. Like, tell me I'm wrong, because I don't think the Cardinals job is worse right now with all the pieces I said than the Padres or the Mets.
Right. If nothing else, the jobs are probably equal, but I think you could argue, based on just the winning culture of the Cardinals franchise, that job is a better one. And you could just forget about the winning culture. If you want to say, well, 2015 doesn't matter, 2000, whatever, doesn't matter. Well, let's just use 2021 and the way they closed. I mean, they outplayed the Padres down the stretch, and it wasn't even close. Yeah. I mean, the Padres were the worst team in baseball down the stretch. The Cardinals were the best team in baseball down the stretch. And I don't know how Mike Schilt loses his job based on what happened there in September. It was one of the great closes to a season we've seen in modern baseball history. Here's the other thing that I think is pretty interesting, because we saw Jeff Passan say that Skip Schumaker is a no-brainer, at least to be interviewed, and he might be tailor-made for the position with the Cardinals. Well, Skip Schumaker has been the bench coach here in San Diego the last couple of years. If he's tailor-made for St. Louis, then AJ Preller better at least interview him. Now, I understand that he's tied to this recent regime that was not successful in 2021, but I'm not putting the close on Skip Schumaker, and it might not be as desirable. I know it's not as desirable as Bruce Bochy. I get it's probably not as desirable as an Aaron Boone or even a Ron Washington. But if he's your next manager of the Cardinals, shouldn't he get an interview here? And the Padres have gone through this. I mean, they've had guys on their bench that haven't gotten interviews and have gone on to success. Dave Roberts would be the best example back in 2015. At the very least, Jim, doesn't Skip Schumaker deserve an interview to see if he's capable of leading the Padres moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. You made the mistake last time with not interviewing Dave Roberts. And look, we know that even if Dave Roberts was hired as Padres manager, probably wasn't going to have the same success in San Diego as he's having in LA. But the fact that he never got an interview, it will always stick out to a lot of people, Padres fans especially. So, yeah, if you're seeing, like, what was the tweet from AZ? He said something along the lines of some Padres players have heard Skip Schumaker might interview with the Cardinals for their manager job. They wonder if he's a candidate in San Diego. They'd like that. So that tells me that he's good in that clubhouse. Players like him. So yeah, I just give him an interview. Do it. I don't see what the problem is. Do I want him to be the next manager of the team? No. But would I be happy if he was retained and put on this staff and, potentially could be like a manager in waiting type of situation? We've heard Jim Bowden say that if they went out and hired a Ron Washington or a Buck Showalter or even a Bochy, you'd need to have that like manager, the next manager in place. So you don't have to really go through this again in 3 or 4 years. Like if in 3 or 4 years, whoever is the manager of the team, if they are an older guy, you don't have to worry about it because guess what? Skip Schumaker is ready to go. He's the next manager of the team. So I would love if Skip stayed on the staff. Do I think that's going to happen? I don't. I think this is a clean gut job of the entire coaching staff, and that's kind of unfortunate because I think some people maybe should stay, and Bobby Dickerson has 1 year left on his deal. I don't even know if he's like let go or not. I think he is, but
I think they've all been given the opportunity to pursue other jobs. I agree with you. I mean, if you go really veteran, you want to have a bench coach in place that you need to be prepared that your manager might not manage for more than a year or two. I mean, if it's Bruce Bochy or Ron Washington, and by the way, it doesn't have to be. I mean, we keep talking about these veteran managers. I just want a manager with experience that's won and had success. I think Aaron Boone checks all those boxes. I mean, he hasn't won a World Series, but then again, he's only managed for 4 years and he's been in the postseason all 4 years. And it's hard for me to pin postseason failures on managers. I mean, if there's specific reasons to do it, that's fine. Dodgers fans for the last decade have pinned everything on Dave Roberts. And like, let's be fair. I mean, he's won 60-something% of his games. He's won a World Series. He might get another. Like, what do you really want? I mean, none of these guys are going to be perfect. Everyone can second guess everything. Bullpen usage is a disaster in baseball. Every fan questions that. So, pinch hitting, double switching. I mean, this is going to come up with any manager, whether it's Dave Roberts or Bruce Bochy or whomever, Jace Tingler. But I want to see someone with experience. I don't want them throwing games away due to a lack of experience, which is something I think they've done these last 2 years. I know that teams can win with rookie managers. I mean, we've seen that happen. There's no question that that can happen, but we talked about this. Like the problem with Tingler was he both didn't have playing experience at the big leagues and he didn't have managerial experience. If he had one and not the other, that would have provided some level of credibility or cover in the clubhouse. But to have been a double-A player at his highest level of professional baseball and having never managed before, when things got tough, that was going to be tough on Jace Tingler. When things get tough on Ron Washington, he spent 11 years in the big leagues, and he's managed in World Series, and he's coached in big games, and he's been on the wrong side of games, and he's been on the right side. So I just want someone that can right the ship. And obviously Andy Green and Jace Tingler weren't necessarily those guys. I think Jace Tingler was asked to be that person. They thought they were going to win these last 2 years, and to some extent they did. Now they have to win. I mean, 2022, they have to win. And they're coming at it 30 games back of teams like the Giants and the Dodgers. So it's time to get someone in there that's capable of leading this group for 162 games through the storms, because you know it's not going to be perfect when you're taking on the Dodgers and the Giants 40 times next year.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Skip Schumaker is not going to be a good manager. I'm not saying that you bring in a first-time guy again, even though I'm sure that if they did that, it would be a guy with good playing career credentials. I'm not saying that those guys wouldn't be good managers either. I just think it's not what this team needs right now in that clubhouse, especially you just had 2 first-time guys, and they both ended horribly, like failed miserably. So you're going to go back to the well of first-time guys again? Like, you can't do that. You just can't. I don't care how great a guy had a playing career. I just don't care. You need to have experience in that chair, in that dugout. You know, you can't go with the mindset again of, well, Skip's a great guy. Yeah, he's a great guy, but I'm sorry, he's never been a manager before. So to put that on his shoulders and to expect him to do something different than Jace Tingler and Andy Green, that's hard. That's a hard thing to expect. And he might do it, but this team cannot continue to have ifs and hopes. They need to have more stability. They need to have more certainty. They need to have more guys that you don't have to have many questions about. Like, can he do this? Can he do that? It's like, oh, well, no. If they bring in a manager that's been a manager, especially if like a Ron Washington or Bruce Bochy, you know the guy's done that. You know the guy can do this. Like, you know the guy is capable of it. If you bring a first-time guy in, regardless of who it is, even if it's Skip Schumaker, you are still going to have those questions, and they cannot do that. That's why, yes, I would want him to get an interview. They absolutely should do their due diligence on literally everybody. This cannot be like last time where it was a rigged hand, a rigged deck, and it didn't matter who was going to interview for that job. It was always going to be Jace Tingler, no matter what. This time around, it needs to be, okay, look, clear our minds. We cannot have any preconceived notion here, even though I think Bruce Bochy should be the number one option. But again, like, clear the table. We're not going to have any front runners. We're going to have everybody interviewed we possibly can. Equal playing field, even though you might have a couple guys ahead of other couple guys. But still, that's what they need to do here. And to interview everybody, like, I'm cool with. And if they don't do it, then we got problems here. Like, if they don't interview Ron Washington, and that's been put out there by Dennis Lin and Kevin Acee, if they do not interview Ron Washington, man, that just shows, again, like, what are we doing here?
Well, how do you not interview the guy that came in second place in your last managerial stint, who's expressing, or your last managerial interviewing process? He was a finalist, and he's expressing interest, and he's a third base coach for a team that's been among the best in baseball the last couple of years.